Dr. Hannah Kim wiped the sweat from her forehead as she crawled through the narrow tunnel deep beneath the ruins of New Geneva.
Ow.
Her breathing mask felt heavy against her face, and the air recycler hummed loudly in the silence.
Oh.
Above her, the dead city stretched for miles, its empty buildings reaching toward a sky that no human had seen for 300 years. "June, can you hear me?" she called into her comm device. Her voice echoed strangely in the metal corridor. "I'm here," came the crackling reply from Lee Jun-ho, her research partner. "Are you sure about this? The tunnel looks like it might collapse." Hannah pressed forward, following the faint energy readings on her scanner. "The readings are getting stronger. There's definitely something down here that shouldn't exist." For weeks, they had been exploring the abandoned human settlements as part of the Galactic Council's historical preservation project. Most alien species thought of humans as nothing special. They remembered them as decent traders who sold useful goods and made fair deals. When humanity disappeared overnight, the galaxy barely noticed. The empty worlds were turned into museums, and life went on. But Hannah had found something different. Her equipment detected energy signatures coming from deep underground, far below the known human settlements. The tunnel she crawled through now was older than any human structure they had cataloged. Much older. "Hannah, you need to see this?" June's voice came through the comm, excitement clear despite the static. "I found an entrance. The door is massive, and it's covered in symbols I've never seen before." She crawled faster, following his signal. When she emerged from the tunnel, she gasped. Before them stood a door made of some kind of crystalline material that pulsed with soft blue light. The symbols carved into its surface hurt to look at directly, as if they existed in more dimensions than her eyes could process. "How old is this place?" she whispered, running her scanner over the door. June checked his readings and went pale. According to the carbon dating, this facility is at least 500 years older than humanity's disappearance. But that's impossible. Humans weren't even spacefaring 500 years before they vanished. The door responded to their presence, sliding open with a sound like singing crystal. Beyond lay a chamber filled with strange machinery that hummed with dormant power. In the center stood a console that looked almost alive, its surface rippling. Like liquid metal, Hannah approached carefully, her scanner beeping frantically. "June, are you recording all of this?" "Every second," he replied, his camera following her movements. "But I don't understand what we're looking at." When Hannah touched the console, it erupted with light, writing themselves in languages that predated known galactic civilization. Yet somehow, she could read them. The words formed in her mind without passing through her eyes. "Ascension Protocol, Final Phase. What does that mean?" June asked, but before Hannah could answer, the chamber filled with the image of a human woman. The hologram was so realistic that Hannah stepped back in surprise. The woman looked exhausted, as if she had been working without sleep for days. Eyes held a strange weight, as if she had seen things that normal minds weren't meant to comprehend. "My name is Dr. Song Min-ji," the recording began. "If you are seeing this message, then the protocol has succeeded. We have crossed the boundary between what we were and what we needed to become." The hologram flickered, showing brief glimpses of the chamber filled with dozens of humans. They stood in circles around massive machines that bent light in impossible ways. As Hannah watched, their forms began to blur and fade, becoming something that was no longer entirely solid. "The galaxy will forget us," Dr. Song continued, her own image becoming translucent. "This is necessary. Cannot remain as we were and do what must be done. But we made a promise to the guardians of reality itself. When the great hunger comes to devour the stars, when all conscious life faces extinction, we will remember our oath." More images flashed through the hologram. Massive creatures made of pure darkness, consuming entire solar systems. Fleets of ships dissolving into nothing as they tried to fight an enemy that existed partially outside normal space. The fear in the faces of 1,000 different alien species as their worlds died. "The threat we saw in our calculations will come," Dr. Song said, her voice growing faint as her image became almost invisible. "When it does, know that humanity chose to become something else, something capable of standing against forces that..." would end all life in the galaxy. The recording showed the final moments of the transformation. The humans in the chamber were no longer recognizable as the species the galaxy remembered. They had become beings of pure thought and energy, existing in dimensions beyond normal understanding. "We go beyond the veil now," Dr. Song whispered, her words seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "The compact is sealed with our sacrifice. When the galaxy needs us, we will return." The hologram faded, leaving Hannah and June alone. In the humming chamber, they stood in silence for long minutes, trying to process what they had witnessed. June finally whispered, "What did we just find?" She looked at the console, still pulsing with alien energy. "I think we found the reason why humanity really disappeared. I think we're going to find out soon why they had to."
Captain.
Nam Soo-jin gripped the armrests of her command chair as the view screen showed something that defied all understanding. Where the Kepler system had existed just hours before, there was now only empty space and streams of golden energy flowing into a massive dark shape that hurt to look at directly. "How many planets were in that system?" she asked her navigation officer, though she already knew the answer. "Like 7 planets, Captain. 3 billion inhabitants across all worlds," Lieutenant Komanesio replied, her voice barely a whisper. "All gone in less than an hour." The thing they called the Devourer moved through space like a living shadow, consuming everything in its path. Stars, planets, entire fleets of ships. Nothing could stop it. The entity seemed to exist in normal space and somewhere else at the same time, making it impossible to target with conventional weapons. Soo-jin's ship, the Harmony's Edge, was a fast courier vessel that had been delivering medical supplies to the outer colonies when the Devourer appeared. They were lucky to escape, but the images burned into her memory would never fade. She had watched entire worlds dissolve, like sugar and water, their matter converted into pure energy that fed the creature's endless hunger. "Captain," called Communications Officer Park Dae-hein from his station, his voice shaking with excitement and fear. "You need to hear this. We're receiving transmissions from the Terran sectors." Soo-jin felt her blood go cold. Terran sectors had been dead for 3 centuries. No signals, no activity, nothing but empty monitoring stations orbiting lifeless worlds where humans had once lived. "Put it on the main screen," she ordered, the display filled with data streams unlike anything she had ever seen. Every human installation across the galaxy was suddenly active, their long silent transmitters broadcasting with more power than they had ever possessed. The message came through in every known language simultaneously, as if the transmission itself could understand who was receiving it. "The compact is honored. The debt is called. Prepare for our return." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Soo-jin stared at the scrolling text, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. The human worlds had been thoroughly explored and catalogued. There was nothing left there except ruins and monuments to a species that had simply vanished one day. Sir Park continued, his hands flying over his console. "The transmission strength is impossible. These signals are reaching every corner of the galaxy simultaneously. No known technology can broadcast with this kind of power and range." Before Soo-jin could respond, her personal communicator chimed with an urgent message from Fleet Command. Admiral Cho Soon-min's battle group had engaged the Devourer near the galactic core just 6 hours ago. The Admiral was a brilliant strategist who had never lost a battle in 40 years of service. His fleet consisted of 200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. The message was brief: fleet destroyed. Its conventional weapons ineffective. Entity exists partially outside normal space-time. Evacuation of core worlds has begun. All available ships report to emergency stations. Soo-jin closed the message and looked around her bridge. Her crew of 23 was all that remained of the medical mission that had started with 5 ships and over 100 personnel. The other vessels had tried to help evacuate civilians from the Kepler system and had been consumed along with everything else. "Captain, I'm getting a priority transmission from Dr. Kong Gi-woo at the Research Institute," Park announced. Soo-jin smiled grimly. Ji-woo had been her roommate at the Naval Academy 20 years ago, before he left military service to become a scientist. If anyone could make sense of these impossible transmissions, it would be him. Put him through on a secure channel. Giwu's face appeared on her personal screen, and she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. Behind him, his laboratory was filled with displays showing data streams and energy readings that made no sense. Sujin, thank the stars you're alive, he said. I've been analyzing these human transmissions since they started 3 hours ago. The technology is operating on principles we don't understand. It's as if the signals are being broadcast from multiple dimensions at the same time. What does that mean? Sujin asked, though she suspected the answer would be beyond her understanding. It means the humans didn't just disappear, Jiwoo replied, his voice filled with wonder and terror. They became something else. Something that exists in spaces we can't even detect. Now they're coming back. The main screen, tactical displays showed the Devourer's path through the galaxy. It was heading directly for the core worlds where most of the galaxy's population lived. At its current speed, it would reach the capital world of New Harmony in less than 2 weeks. Every military force in the galaxy combined couldn't slow it down. The message keeps repeating, Park reported. But now there's something else. Human stations are powering up equipment that's been dormant for centuries. Energy readings are off the charts. Sujin stared at the tactical display showing the Devourer's relentless advance toward the heart of galactic civilization. Billions would die if nothing stopped it. The combined fleets of 50 different species had proven useless against the entity. Whatever the humans became, Jiwoo, she said quietly, we'd better hope they kept their promise. President Yang Hyun-soo pressed his face against the reinforced viewport of the diplomatic station, watching something that his mind struggled to accept as real. Above Earth, space itself was tearing apart like fabric being ripped by invisible hands. The edges of the tier glowed with colors that had no names. Through the opening came something that made every instrument on the station scream warnings. Sir, all our sensors are failing, reported his aide, Commander Lee Soo-jin, her voice tight with fear. Whatever is coming through that opening, our equipment can't measure it. The beings that emerged looked nothing like the humans the galaxy remembered. They had no solid bodies, instead appearing as shifting patterns of light and thought that seemed to exist in several places at once. When Yang tried to focus on one of them, his eyes watered and his head began to pound at Dr. Bae So-young. The Council's chief scientist stood beside him with her recording equipment running. President, the energy readings are impossible. These entities are operating outside the normal laws of physics. They're not just in our dimension, they're existing in multiple realities simultaneously. One of the beings moved closer to the station, and suddenly Yang felt something touch his mind directly. It wasn't painful, but it was overwhelming, like trying to drink from a waterfall. Knowledge flowed into his consciousness without passing. Through his ears or eyes, we are what humanity chose to become, came a voice that spoke directly to his thoughts. The words carried with them images and emotions that no normal language could express. Asterisk, the Ascension Protocol was not our death, but our transformation into something greater. Asterisk, Yang staggered backward, his hands clutching his head. Around him, other members of the diplomatic team were having similar reactions as the beings communicated with all of them at once. Asterisk, we saw the threat that would come. The voice continued, and Yang's mind filled with visions of the Devourer consuming entire star systems. Asterisk, we prepared by becoming something capable of standing against forces that exist beyond normal reality. Asterisk, Dr. Bae was frantically taking notes, though her hands shook as she wrote. President, they're sharing technical knowledge with me, the principles they're operating on. It's like they've learned to work directly with the fundamental forces that create reality itself. Through the viewport, Yang watched as one of the transformed humans demonstrated their abilities. With what seemed like a simple gesture, they reached out and touched empty space. Matter began to form from nothing, creating complex structures that folded in on themselves in ways that hurt to observe. The being then stepped sideways and simply vanished, reappearing instantly on the other side of the station. Asterisk, the compact was made with the guardians of existence itself, the beings explained, their thoughts flowing into every mind on the station. Asterisk, we agreed to transcend our mortal forms and stand watch in the spaces between realities. In exchange, we would protect all conscious life when the time came. Asterisk General Rutaman arrived on the observation deck with a squad of security officers. Though Yang noticed their weapons were lowered, the general's tactical equipment was sparking and smoking, completely overwhelmed by whatever energies the transformed humans were producing. "Sir, my instruments can't even detect them properly," the general reported, his voice filled with awe. "And fear, they appear on some sensors, but not others. It's like they're choosing which parts of reality to exist in." Yang watched as more of the beings emerged from the tier in space. Each one was unique, yet they all shared the same impossible nature. They moved through solid matter as if it weren't there, communicated without sound, and seemed to exist in several places at the same time. Asterisk. "We gave up everything that made us human." The beings continued, and Yang felt the weight of their sacrifice in his own heart. Asterisk. "Our bodies, our individual identities, our ability to love and be loved as you understand it. We became something that exists in harmony with the deepest mysteries of existence itself." Asterisk. Dr. Bay looked up from her notes, as tears streaming down her face. "President, they're showing me what they sacrificed. They can never return to being human. They exist in a state of permanent exile from everything they once were, sustained only by their commitment to protect life in the galaxy." Through the station's communications system, reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Similar tiers in reality were opening above every major world, and transformed humans were emerging everywhere at once. Their presence was causing panic among some species, but others were beginning to understand what they were witnessing. Asterisk. "The Devourers are not evil," the beings explained, sharing more knowledge directly into Yang's mind. Asterisk. "They are the universe's way of maintaining balance. When consciousness grows too powerful, it threatens to tear reality apart. The Devourers come to reduce that threat." Asterisk. Yang felt his understanding of the crisis shift completely. "You mean we caused this? Our psychic development? Our growing awareness? Across the galaxy?" Asterisk. "Yes. But we offer another solution. We can absorb the excess consciousness, becoming permanent guardians of the balance between awareness and existence. This is why we transformed ourselves to be capable of this sacrifice." Asterisk. General Ru stared at his useless tactical displays, then looked out at the beings floating in space around Earth. "They're not just powerful," he whispered to his aide. "There's something else entirely. No wonder the galaxy forgot them. How do you remember gods?" The transformed humans began to move away from Earth, heading toward the approaching devourer. Yang realized he was about to witness a battle between forces that existed beyond normal understanding, fought by beings that had once been as human as himself. Dr. Lim Yunji gripped the safety rail of the research vessel, Eternal Dawn, as reality twisted around them. Through the reinforced viewport, she watched something that her training had never prepared her for. The battle between the transformed humans and the devourer was happening in normal space and several other dimensions at the same time. "Doctor, our instruments are going crazy," called her assistant, Park Jinwoo, from across the laboratory. "The readings show that space-time itself is being rewritten every few seconds." Yonji watched in fascination and terror as entire star systems became weapons in the cosmic battle. The transformed humans moved through space like living thoughts, their forms shifting between pure energy and something that looked almost solid. When they gestured, planets moved from their orbits. When they spoke, stars changed color. The devourer was equally impossible to understand. It appeared as a massive shadow that existed in multiple dimensions, reaching through space with tendrils of pure darkness that consumed everything they touched. But now, for the first time since it had appeared, the creature was meeting resistance.
How did you go?
"Are you recording all of this?" Yunji asked, though she knew their equipment could barely detect what was happening, let alone record it properly. "I'm trying, Doctor, but our cameras keep overloading. Whatever energies they're using, they're beyond anything we can measure." Suddenly, Yunji felt the familiar touch of the transformed humans in her mind. The sensation was gentler this time, as if they were being careful not to overwhelm her with too much knowledge at once. Asterisk. "You wish to understand." came their voice in her thoughts. We will show you, but the truth will bring you pain. Images flooded her consciousness, showing her the real nature of the crisis. The Devourer wasn't an invader from another galaxy or a weapon created by some hostile species. It was something far more terrifying. It was the universe's own defense mechanism. Asterisk, the galaxy's psychic presence has grown too powerful. The transformed humans explained, their thoughts heavy with cosmic sadness. Asterisk, every species that develops consciousness adds to the total awareness in the universe. When that awareness reaches a certain level, it begins to damage reality itself. Asterisk, Yunji saw visions of the fabric of space-time, developing cracks and tears as the combined minds of billions of beings pressed against the boundaries of existence. She watched as dimensions began to bleed into each other, creating chaos that would eventually destroy everything. Asterisk, the Devourers are sent to reduce this pressure. The beings continued. Asterisk, they consume consciousness itself, returning the universe to a safe level of awareness. From their perspective, they are saving reality by eliminating the threat. Asterisk, Ambassador Ojasun had arrived on the research vessel. Just hours before the battle began. He was the Galactic Council's chief diplomat, a man who had spent his life bringing different species together in peace. Now he stood beside Yunji, his face pale as he absorbed the same terrible knowledge. "You mean we caused this?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of the ship's straining engines. "All of our progress, our evolution, our growing understanding of the universe, it was all leading to our own destruction." "Not destruction," the transformed humans replied, their thoughts touching both Yunji and UHS simultaneously. Asterisk, evolution. Beyond the physical form, as we chose, or reduction to a level that reality can sustain, as the Devourers would accomplish. These are the only two paths. Asterisk, through the viewport, Yunji watched as the battle intensified. The transformed humans were changing their tactics, no longer trying to destroy the Devourer, but instead attempting to communicate with it. She realized they were negotiating, trying to find another solution to the cosmic crisis. "We offer ourselves as a permanent solution," they explained. Asterisk, we can absorb the excess psychic energy of the galaxy, becoming eternal guardians who maintain the balance between consciousness and reality. But this requires us to sacrifice our final connection to what we once were. Asterisk, Park Jinwoo looked up from his instruments, his eyes wide with wonder and fear. "Doctor, the energy readings are changing. Something fundamental is happening to the transformed humans. They're merging with something." Yunji felt tears running down her face as she understood the full scope of what the transformed humans were offering. They had already given up their bodies, their individual identities, their ability to experience love or joy or any of the emotions that made life meaningful. Now they were offering to give up even more. Asterisk, we will become part of the universal framework itself. Asterisk, they explained, their mental voice growing fainter as the transformation began. Asterisk, we will exist in the spaces between thoughts, in the silence between heartbeats, standing guard against threats that normal minds cannot perceive. Asterisk, Ambassador gripped the viewport as he watched the final phase of the battle. The transformed humans and the Devourer were becoming something new, something that existed beyond the normal dimensions of space and time. "They're not just saving us," he realized, his voice filled with awe and grief. "They're becoming the very thing that will protect the galaxy forever. But they'll never be human again. They'll never be anything we can understand or communicate with." The battle was ending, but not with victory or defeat. Instead, it was ending with transformation on a scale that defied comprehension. The beings that had once been human were becoming something that would guard reality itself, ensuring that consciousness and existence could coexist without destroying each other. Yunji watched through her tears as the last traces of humanity disappeared into something far greater and far more terrible than anything the galaxy had ever known. Chief Archivist Moon Sang-ho stood in the center of the memorial hall on Earth, holding a datapad that contained the most important message in galactic history. Around him, representatives from every known species in the galaxy had gathered to witness the reading of humanity's final Transmission. The memorial itself was built from materials that defied normal understanding. The walls seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, shifting between solid matter and pure light, depending on how you looked at them. The transformed humans had created it in their final moments. A gift that would serve as a bridge between normal reality and the cosmic forces they had become. The transmission was received exactly 1 hour after the merger was complete. Songho announced to the assembled crowd. His voice carried clearly through the hall, though he spoke in barely more than a whisper. These are the last words we will ever receive from humanity as we knew them. He activated the datapad, and the message filled the air around them. Not as sound, but as direct meaning that every being present could understand regardless of their species or language. We are forgotten by the galaxy, but we remember you all. In the spaces between stars, in the silence between thoughts, we stand watch. When the next threat comes, and it will come, know that humanity's children still guard the light. The silence that followed was profound. Many of the alien diplomats were weeping, though their tears came in forms that ranged from crystalline drops to glowing particles of energy. They all understood what they had witnessed, the complete sacrifice of an entire species for the sake of all life in the galaxy. Dr. Yu. Hana stepped forward from the crowd. She had been chosen to lead the new Psychic Development Council, a body created to ensure that the galaxy's growing consciousness would never again threaten reality itself. The weight of that responsibility showed in every line of her face. The protocols are in place, she announced to the gathering. Every species will monitor their psychic development according to the guidelines left by the transformed humans. We will never allow our awareness to grow beyond the safe limits again. Ambassador Kim Tae-young from the Galactic Council nodded gravely. The Terran worlds will be maintained as they are now, not as museums of what humanity was, but as pilgrimage, sites where we can remember what they became. Through the memorial's transparent walls, the assembled beings could see the landscape of Earth. It was no longer the dead world it had been for 3 centuries. Somehow, the transformed humans had restored it in their final act, bringing back the forests and oceans and skies that their ancestors had known, but no humans would ever walk on it again. Visitors come here every day now, reported Park Min-jun, the memorial's keeper, not just to learn about human history, but to understand the price of transcendence. They want to comprehend what it means to sacrifice everything for others. The crowd began to disperse, but many remained behind to walk through the memorial's gardens. These spaces existed partially outside normal reality, allowing visitors to glimpse the cosmic forces that the transformed humans had become part of. It was the closest any mortal being could come to understanding what humanity had transformed into. Dr. Choi Jung-soo, philosopher from the University of New Harmony, stood before one of the memorial's meditation chambers. Inside, images played, showing the final moments of the transformation. When the ascended humans and the devourer had merged into something entirely new, they didn't just save us, he said to his companion, a student who had traveled across the galaxy to study here. They became the guardians that will protect reality itself for all time. But the cost. They gave up everything that made them. Human, the student, a young vegan named Zara, watched the images with wide eyes. Will we ever see them again? Will they ever return? Choi shook his head slowly. They exist now in the spaces between dimensions, in the fundamental forces that hold reality together. They're everywhere and nowhere, watching over us but unable to interact with us in any way we would recognize. As night fell over Earth, the memorial took on an otherworldly glow. The walls became more transparent, revealing glimpses of the cosmic realm where the transformed humans now existed. Visitors could see shapes moving in the distance, beings of pure thought and energy. Maintaining the balance that kept the universe stable, General Park Seojin arrived with the evening security. Detail, though his role was more ceremonial than practical. No force in the galaxy would dare disturb this sacred place, and the transformed humans themselves had made it clear that the memorial was under their protection. Any unusual readings today? He asked Dr. Yuhana, who had remained behind too. Monitor the psychic energy levels. Nothing dangerous, she replied, checking her instruments. but there are constant low-level fluctuations. I think they're still trying to communicate with us in ways we can barely detect. As the last visitors left for the day, Song-ho remained alone in the memorial hall. He looked up at the ceiling, which showed a real-time view of the cosmos, and whispered a prayer of gratitude to beings who could no longer hear individual voices, but somehow knew the contents of every heart in the galaxy. Humanity was gone. But their children had become something far greater. They were the eternal guardians, forgotten by history, but remembered by the universe itself. Standing watch in the darkness between stars to ensure that life would continue to flourish under their protection,